This is KM Weiland, and you're listening to the 283rd episode of the Helping Writers Become Authors podcast. I implemented something of a radical new schedule this year. One full day of fiction writing each week, and one other day away from business work to do other things. Plus, I've been really concentrating on streamlining my internet activities. I've gotten rid of the bookmarks for sites that were really just pointless time wasters. Even my main news source, MSN, bit the dust. And I concentrated on unsubscribing from the vast majority of email mailing lists. It's been a big change, and it's taken me pretty much all of January and February to settle into it, but I'm really starting to feel the benefits. It's been great to be able to focus more on fiction, and I am amazed by the amount of time I freed up just by doing these simple little streamlining tricks on the internet and in my email. I've never been someone to waste time, and I'm all about economy of motion and making the best use of time. But I never would have guessed I was wasting so much time on seemingly little non-essentials. The latest post in the video series on my blog is how to drive your readers wild with hints and story hooks without frustrating them. It talks about one of the most common misconceptions about a great hook for your book's beginning, and it shows you how to take grabbing your readers to the next level. To find the post, visit my site at helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com. And now I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast entitled Most Common Writing Mistakes Part 39, Referencing Characters by Title Rather Than Name. In the time it takes you to write 2 small words, you might be dramatically distancing your readers from your story's narrative. Scared? You should be, but don't be that scared, because this is one of our most common writing mistakes that is just as easy to fix as it is to commit. So, what are those 2 small but egregious words? Your character's title in place of his name. One of these sinful words is almost always the, although a possessive pronoun can do the trick as well. The other is a descriptive noun that tells readers something about a character, his gender, his status, his job, his relationship with another character. For example, you might be referencing characters in your story as any of the following: the doctor, the pilot, his mother, her boss, his fiancé, the man, the lady. You may be wrinkling your nose in disagreement. After all, what's so wrong with any of those? They're just simple descriptions that are completely true. How could they possibly be pulling your readers out of the narrative? Good question, and the answer is you're right. There's nothing wrong with any of these in themselves. The problem is only in their actual usage in the narrative. Take a look. Consider the following deep third-person point of view. Our narrator is a spunky astronaut on the brink of being grounded from her first mission thanks to a head cold. Sienna stared at Dr. Geraldo Martinez. He had been her personal physician ever since she came on board the launch team. He knew how much this mission meant to her. Surely he could fudge the reports on a measly head cold to get her headed back to the moon. "You can't be serious," she said. The doctor exchanged a pained glance with Mike, who'd asked Sienna to marry him last night. Her fiancé intervened. "Now, Sweet Pea, you can't blame Geraldo for this." The astronaut slid off the examining table. "Just watch me." She stormed out of the room. She talked to her boss about this, just see if she wouldn't. Now, granted, the example is a little hampered by the fact that this is the first time you're meeting Sienna and her gang, so you presumably need a little descriptive guidance to know she's an astronaut, Geraldo is a doctor, and Mike is her fiancé. But this scene is taking place in the middle of the story. Readers have already been introduced to all these characters and their relationships to Sienna. They know these characters' roles. Even more importantly, Sienna definitely knows their roles. The trouble with referring to characters by their titles rather than their names is that it kills the realism of a deep POV. How many of us mentally refer to people, especially people with whom we're familiar, as the doctor or my fiancé? Subtle as it is, this is a tiny but instant pin in the balloon of your reader's suspension of disbelief. Fortunately, fixing this one of our most common writing mistakes is simple. All you have to do is switch out the titles for names and pronouns. Sienna stared at Dr. Martinez. He had been her personal physician ever since she came on board the launch team. He knew how much the mission meant to her. Surely he could fudge the reports on a measly head cold to get her headed back to the moon. "You can't be serious," she said. He exchanged a pained glance with Mike, who'd asked Sienna to marry him last night. Mike intervened. "Now, Sweet Pea, you can't blame Geraldo for this." She slid off the examining table. "Just watch me." She stormed out of the room. She'd talk to Captain Wilkes about this, just see if she wouldn't. The effect is admittedly a simple one, but never discount the importance of intimacy with your readers in your narrative choices. The deeper your POV, the more important these subtleties become. Admittedly, this is a bit of a pet peeve for me. Just ask anyone I've ever edited for. But it's one even I find myself committing in my own writing. So what are some of the reasons we might end up falling into this trap? Reason number 1, we're quite tickled by the character's title or role. This is undoubtedly the worst reason we can choose for committing this writing mistake. Admittedly, it's pretty awesome to be writing about an astronaut, or a pilot, or a secret agent, or a cowboy. Sometimes we just want to swish the sound of those lovely roles over our tongues and enjoy the satisfaction of it all. But readers don't enjoy it nearly as much as we do. They don't need to be reminded at every turn that they're reading about a secret agent. Even if they don't notice and feel patronized, the small amount of enjoyment we get out of it still isn't worth endangering narrative intimacy even slightly. Reason number 2. We're worried readers might forget a character's role or relationship. When Dr. Martinez is introduced in Chapter 1 and then fails to reappear until Chapter 32, we might be legitimately concerned that readers will have forgotten all about him and his medical practice. But aside from the fact that, in his particular case, his own name, Dr. Martinez, offers reminder enough, there are always going to be subtler and simpler solutions than constantly referring to him as the doctor. Now, a final comment on this. There's nothing wrong with providing readers a needed reminder, but readers often need to be reminded far less than we think they do. So give them credit for being just as aware of your story details as you are. If you end up erring on the side of not enough info, your beta readers will always let you know. Reason number 3. We feel the need for variation in our sentence subjects. Variety in our narrative is important. Sometimes we might worry that using a character's name or even just a pronoun over and over again will grow repetitious in readers' minds. But frankly, this is not a concern. Character names and pronouns are invisible to readers. They'll never fault you for overusing them. If you're struggling with monotonous sentences, the problem is not that you're using Sienna's name in every sentence. The problem is that you're not varying your sentence structures. For example, don't do this. Sienna got out of bed and made coffee. She read the newspaper while she drank her coffee. She took a shower and got dressed for training. Don't do this either. Sienna got out of bed and made coffee. She read the newspaper while she drank her coffee. The astronaut took a shower and got dressed for training. Instead, do this. The first rays of sunlight woke Sienna, and she rolled out of bed. A cup of Folgers was already calling her name. While she drank off the whole pot, she looked over the paper for any news of the launch. Not a word. Probably just as well, though. She tossed the paper across the table and headed to the bathroom to shower and dress for today's bout of training. Most of us overuse character titles and roles to the point that this can seem like an easy mistake to shrug off. Don't do that. Take the extra time to tighten up your narrative by removing this unnecessary obstacle between your readers and their intimacy with your story. The result will always be a subtly polished manuscript that welcomes readers into its world. Thank you for listening to the Wordplay Podcast. To read a transcript of this episode, you can visit my website at helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com. And be sure to check back again next week.